Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. And my name is Dan, and there's been a lot of discussion about who are the best forwards to go for in FPL this year. Now, I thought today we would rank them all in a tier list to try and figure out which ones are the best ones to go for and which ones I'm not so keen on. So if you do enjoy this one, please drop a like. If you really enjoyed this one, let's try and hit 2,000 likes on this video, and maybe we'll do a midfielder version of this. But only if you hit 2,000 likes, because I want to make sure you guys actually want to see a midfielder version. Do subscribe if you are interested in that as well. But let's first of all have a look at these forwards. Okay, so we've got the 20 most popular forwards in FPL. We're going to rank them on this tier list in terms of whether they're going to be must-haves, great picks, solid picks, risky picks, or straight-up avoids that we shouldn't be touching. We're going to start with the 20th most popular, working our way up to the most popular forward in the game as things stand. So, the 20th most popular forward in the game right now is Solanke, and I feel like he is not going to be providing quite as much value for money as he did last year. Last year, he was a decent pick during spells of the season, but he was also kind of priced around 5 to 5.5 million, depending on what time you kind of picked him up. So, now he's all the way up to 6.5 million. I feel like he eats a little bit too much into your budget compared to what his output is going to be, what he's going to be able to provide for you. So, a little bit of a risk here. The fixtures aren't amazing either, so the Bournemouth man is going to go into the risky category. Next up, I'm going to put in Dominic Calvert-Lewin in the avoid category. And I know a lot of people have been going for him, and maybe I could be proven wrong on this one, but as far as I'm concerned, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, yes, he is a much cheaper price than before at 6 million, and the fixtures look okay as well. But a problem that Everton have had consistently is creating chances, and I'm not sure too many people are expecting Everton to do too well this season anyway. And as far as Dominic Calvert-Lewin is concerned, he hasn't really been hitting the really high numbers for about 2.5 years now. So I wonder if people are picking him, putting them in their fantasy teams, because they kind of have this idea, this image of Calvert-Lewin from a couple of years ago. That hasn't really been the case. He's had a lot of injuries. He's really struggled to find form, and I don't even know if he's 100% nailed on anymore. Even when he was fit last season, he wasn't a guaranteed starter. So I think therefore we have to say Calvert-Lewin is going to be an avoid for our Gameweek 1 teams. Now, next up, I've got a really nice pick for you, and that is going to be Isak from Brentford. And guys, remember, in this tier list, we're kind of ranking players on how good they are as FPL picks. So we're not just putting the best forwards in the world in the top categories, but we're also taking their price into consideration as well. And I think, considering these other guys, 6.5, 6 for Solanke and Calvert-Lewin, you can get Isak for 6 million as well. And Isak is the main striker for Brentford. When Brentford play with two forwards, it will be Isak and Mbeumo as the two forwards. When Brentford play with a three-man strike force, it is actually Isak in the centre, and Mbeumo actually plays off the wing. So if you want the main central striker for Brentford during the time that Tony is suspended, well, we've got one right here, and he only costs 6 million. He ended last season really, really strongly as well. We spoke about him a little bit more in more detail in yesterday's video, so do go check that out after this one if you want to hear a little bit more about Isak. But basically, he is a player who is, whenever he's on the pitch, he scores goals. And I think there's a small chance he could take the penalties off Mbeumo as well. There's a chance. He's taken many previously in his career, so he could have a penalty taker here in addition to that. Next up, we've got Vinicius, and I'm going to put him in the avoid category as well. 5 million. I think maybe some people are picking him because they think he's the Real Madrid Vinicius. I don't know what kind of budget Fulham have in their locker, but I'm not sure they can afford the Vinicius from Real Madrid. However, Vinicius is a player who did get some points last season, but the problem was that the only times Vinicius ever played for Fulham really was when Mitrovic was either injured or suspended, and we saw a kind of run at the end of last season where Mitrovic was suspended, unfortunately, and Vinicius took his place in the starting 11. Whenever Mitrovic is fit and available, Vinicius is basically on the bench getting a couple of minutes here and there, not going to get barely any game time. And I think if you want to get a player who is maybe just going to sit on your bench, who you're not really expecting to get many points at all, you just want a cheap guy, just want a cheap forward to stick on your bench, then just use a 4.5 million forward. There are 4.5 million forwards that can do exactly the same as Vinicius. Maybe during the times when Mitrovic is injured or suspended for whatever reason, at that point we can consider Vinicius, but that is not the case right now, so therefore he has to be an avoid. Next up, João Pedro, who I feel like I have to put in the risky pick category, but I think it's kind of a nice risk to take. Now, Brighton have just spent 13 million on João Pedro. He is a player who's done pretty well in the lower division in the Championship for Watford. Watford. He is a player with a lot of potential, and he's a player who can play in multiple positions. You can play as a striker, you can play as a second striker, you can play as an attacking midfielder, you can play as a winger, predominantly on the left wing as well. So when a player has lots of different positions they can play, that often means that they are going to get minutes because they have more opportunities to get minutes. Again, he is a player I spoke about in more detail yesterday. I do like this pick, but I do definitely think it is risky. So I don't know if you guys are willing to take that risk. He has only 5.5 million though, so hey, you never know. Next up, Carlton Morris. Let's put him in here. That's looking okay. I think he is probably a risky pick. I think 5.5 million. It's a good price for him, I guess, but the problem is, it's a Luton Town forward, and Luton Town, we're not expecting to score too many goals in the Premier League season. We're expecting them to struggle, but we also get penalties from Morris, which is quite nice, I guess. So there are ways of getting points from Morris. You've got a nailed-on start, so you're going to get minimum 2 points every game week. You're going to get the odd goal from him. You're going to get penalties from him as well, but he's not going to reach the heights of a lot of the other forwards that we're going to talk about today. Next up, Cameron Archer, who I'm going to put in the solid pick category. Not for a player to start in your starting 11, but if you're going for you're going for a two-man forward formation and you just need a really cheap forward to sit on your bench, then I think Archer is probably your man. Now, second half of last season, he had a very, very successful loan to Middlesbrough, where he took them all the way to the Championship playoffs. He scored a lot of goals as well. I think he scored 10 goals in 19 games for Middlesbrough last season, which is pretty decent returns. And he's a young player who's got a lot of potential. Now, Aston Villa have not got a backup striker for Watkins, so whenever Watkins is unavailable or what gets substituted off, it is going to be Archer coming in, and I think there's a small chance that Archer could get a Premier League loan as well, and if that's the case, 4.5 million is going to look really, really good for him. So right now, I would say he is one of the best 4.5 million forwards to go for, but maybe we'll cover 4.5 million forwards and midfielders in a future video. Let me know what you think about that one. Next up, McAtee. So unless you guys are picking McAtee because you are big Ted Lasso fans, and maybe you think it's the AFC Richmond McAtee, then I don't really know why people are picking this guy, because he is, yes, a 4.5 million forward, but he is also a guy who spent last season on loan at Grimsby Town. I don't know if he's quite Premier League ready yet. I think he's probably still got a couple of years of development before he's going to be ready for the Premier League. I think he'll possibly go straight back on loan, and even if he does stay at Luton, he's going to get barely any minutes at all, so doesn't seem much point in picking him, even in your 4.5 million forward slot, to be fair. Cody Gakpo, I think, is a fairly solid pick, actually. We're expecting him to be the main starting guy at Liverpool in the new season. I think there are potentially other options that could outscore him, but he's not a bad pick. My issue with Liverpool forwards is that because they have so many attackers, their attacking returns are going to be spread out quite a lot, and it's going to be quite hard to nail down who is going to be the guy actually getting the point. So it could be Gakpo. I think he's a solid pick, but I'm not comfortable putting him any higher than that. Mitrovic, I feel like he should probably go in the risky category. The opening 2 games are okay, but in game week 3 and 4, he does play against Arsenal and Man City, both away from home, back to back. So I feel like for game week 1, I would not be quite prepared to go for Mitrovic. I think I would rather wait till maybe game week 5, where the fixtures look really good for Fulham. They kind of play Luton at that stage. So I feel like we got to wait a little bit before getting Mitrovic. If you're going for him in game week 1, it is going to be risky, and it might be a transfer waiting to happen with game week 3 and 4 in mind, and those difficult fixtures there. Darwin Nunez, I feel like, is also a risky pick. I'm going to put him slightly below Mitrovic because I don't know if he's going to be starting for Liverpool or not. We know whenever he does start, he has that chaos factor. He can score goals, and he certainly gets a lot of opportunities to score goals, but his minutes are a little bit on a knife edge. We don't know what's going to be the situation there, so I feel like Darwin at this price, he could be insane. This could be insane value for money, but we do probably need to monitor him before we commit to him in game week 1. Next up, Surridge, and I feel like he is a player who is going to ruin a few people's days. So let me tell you why. So Surridge obviously got a few points last season, the highest scoring 4.5 million forward of last year. I don't think he's going to be that this year, but last year he was the highest scoring 4.5 million forward. The problem is now everyone is kind of defaulting to Surridge as their bench 4.5 million forward. And when so many people go for the same super cheap bench player, as soon as those people kind of decide, okay, I want to switch it up, I want to bring in a new forward, I want to change my formation, I want to have 3 forwards now, I'm going to sell Surridge in order to accommodate a new forward. Now what happens then is Surridge is going to drop in price, and I feel like Surridge is going to be a player who is going to drop to 4.4 million within the first couple of weeks of FPL because he's so popular. So many people will be selling him as they switch formation to bring in a new forward. So I think that is a real problem with Surridge. I understand you want to go for a 4.5 million forward who might score you some points, even though they're going to be like last on your bench. But what you don't want to do is pick a player who's actually going to start decreasing your team value, decreasing your budget for future transfers. So that is something you definitely need to consider before going for a player like Surridge. You don't need him. He's going to be last on your bench anyway, and there are other options who I think will score the odd points in FPL if you really want them. But again, we'll maybe do a video about that one. Next up, I'm going to put both of the Newcastle forwards in risky pick. They are good players, don't get me wrong, but they also have a lot of risk, and that's mostly down to, we're not sure what formation each of them are going to fit in as. Is Wilson going to be the main starting striker? Is Isak going to be the main starting striker? Is Isak going to be playing off the left wing again? Not exactly sure what's going to be happening there. The problem is, last season, Wilson's form was so good that he was kind of undroppable, but maybe with the new season, I think Isak, in the long term, is seen as a striker as well. So we're not really sure who's going to be starting, who's going to be taking the number 9 slot. You don't want Wilson if he is on the bench. You don't want Isak if he's playing off the left wing. And we do have the first opening 4 games are really difficult for Newcastle. So we do have that little bit of time to monitor these players. So for game week 1, I'm not sure these players are the ones to go for in your draft, but definitely players that we will be owning later on in the season. I just want to see what the situation is, see who's going to be playing where, and get these bad fixtures out the way before we start committing to those Newcastle guys. Next up, Evan Ferguson, and I appreciate he is probably a risky pick, but he's kind of, again, a risky pick I actually kind of like. So I'm not happy to put him in solid pick because I don't think he's a solid option, really. He does possess that risk, so I'm going to put him at the top of the risky pick tier. If things go well with Ferguson, they go very well, but he's still not a player who's really established himself as the starting number 9 for Brighton. And even when he is starting, he is a player who's often substituted early. We've got João Pedro, who could play at striker as well. Brighton have just spent a lot of money on him, so if there's going to be rotation between those two. Danny Welbeck is still at the club as well. Dennis Undav obviously had a decent end to the season last year, so is he going to eat into some of the minutes? It's very difficult to say right now who is going to be the main starting striker at Brighton. If the answer is Ferguson and he's getting a lot of minutes, then he is a fantastic pick, an insane bargain at 6 million. But there is risk there, and you guys have kind of got to decide whether you are willing to take that risk or not. For me personally, I'm not quite sure I want to go there. I'm not confident enough. Next up, we're going to go for Ollie Watkins. I think he is a solid pick. He is not going to go any higher than solid pick, though, because he is priced at 8 million, and 8 million is quite expensive for what he offers. I'm actually pretty confident about Aston Villa this season. I think they're going to have a really good season, and Ollie Watkins should be nailed on for 90 minutes pretty much every single game, which is very nice indeed. He kind of found a little bit of form in the second half of last season, tailed off towards the very end of the season, but still, there's some good fixtures coming up. He is a player who does very well. He's on penalties as well. There's lots of things to like about Ollie Watkins. He's just a tiny bit too expensive for me. I would have liked to see him at 7.5 million, and I think that may have been enough to maybe elevate him to great pick, but unfortunately, because of his price, we're going to have to drop him down just 1 tier. Now, our next great pick is coming on screen now, guys, and it's Harry Kane. Now, the problem with Harry Kane is his price, and it's really difficult to squeeze him in, as well as all of the other wonderful midfielders that we want right now, and a certain other striker that I'm sure is in a lot of you guys' team. That's the problem. I can't really fault Harry Kane. He is a fantastic player. He is a fantastic FPL option, and he's going to do very well this season if he stays at Spurs. He is a great pick, objectively. However, can you fit him in your team? I don't know. That doesn't stop him from being a great pick. He is worth 12.5 million. He is value for money at that. It's just a case of whether you can fit him into your team or not. And for most of you guys, the answer is going to be no. So, let's move on to Nkunku. who I think I'm not really comfortable putting him any higher than solid pick. I do think he is solid though, and I know a few people would maybe describe him as a risky pick, but in terms of minutes, he's going to be nailed on. He is probably going to be Chelsea's best player in the new season. Certainly on paper, you would expect him to be their best attacking player. We're not sure if he's actually going to be playing as a forward or not. More likely, he's going to be playing behind the striker, possibly on the wing as well. So there are different positions Nkunku could play. The problem is, we don't know how Chelsea are going to play. So I think Chelsea are a risky team, but Nkunku is a kind of a good pick. But we have to kind of balance it out a little bit there. Top scorer in the Bundesliga last season. The season before that, he was Bundesliga Player of the Year. It is clear that this guy is talented. It's just a case of whether Chelsea are going to hit the ground running or whether they're going to take a little bit of time to adapt. I think it's fine to go early on Nkunku. I think that's an absolutely valid pick for Game Week 1. But for a lot of us, we may want to, again, monitor this player, see how well he does, see how he fits in with Chelsea, see how well Chelsea are playing under the new manager, under the new system, with their new players as well, and see what they can do. We have got Liverpool as the first game, so I think it's acceptable to go without Nkunku for Game Week 1, but if you want to go for him, that is absolutely fine. Next up, we have got what I believe is a great pick, and I'm going to put him in a similar category as a Harry Kane and Wissa. Now, he comes in at a price point between the two other guys. So, Kane, I think, for your premium forwards, is obviously a very good pick. Wissa, I think, if you're looking for a cheap forward, is the great pick. If you're looking for a forward between those kind of price ranges, Gabriel Jesus is probably going to be your man. So we've got a nailed-on Arsenal starting striker who put up some really good numbers last season. Started off the season amazingly before he was kind of injured for a little while. But he was putting up really good numbers even after he came back from injury as well. Taking shots constantly in the box. If Saka is off the pitch, Jesus is the backup guy on penalties as well. He creates for his teammates a little bit as well. So he does a lot of work, and in general, I think he's going to be really good with Arsenal's great opening fixtures as well, because we have got some good fixtures for Arsenal, which I think is going to be definitely something that we do need to consider. I think an Arsenal triple up is definitely on. I would be looking to go for one Arsenal defender, maybe a Saka in midfield, and then after that, I'm kind of picking between Jesus and Martinelli or Ødegaard, but since there's so many midfielders to choose from this season, but not actually that many forwards that I'm happy to put in these higher categories, I think maybe going Jesus in the forward position as your second Arsenal attacker, and then you can kind of go for all kinds of whatever midfielders you kind of want to go for. It opens up an extra midfield slot for you to pick from if you take one of your Arsenal midfielders and turn them into Jesus, an Arsenal forward. So I like a lot of things about Jesus. He's also at a nice price point, 8 million. If you want to switch him to a Gakpo or a Darwin Nunez, if they look good, if Nkunku looks good, you can go for him. There's lots of options around that price. Those Newcastle forwards as well. If you want to kind of take one of them on in Game Week 5, that'll be a really good time to hop on one of them as well. And Jesus just really easily allows you to do that because he's that 8 million price point, and there's so many options at 8 million or slightly below 8 million as well. So it just seems like a really sensible pick. And finally, we've got one more player to add onto the tier list. And yeah, it's going to be Erling Haaland in the must-have category. Even at 14 million, with these fixtures, he is a player you absolutely must have. You absolutely must captain every single game week. He's currently at around 83% owned. Can that go to 90% by the time we hit Game Week 1? Maybe, but the 17% who aren't picking Erling Haaland right now, you guys are crazy because this guy is just a must-have. He is making FPL boring to a degree. He's a must-have, must-captain every game week. Yeah, we don't need to talk too much about Erling Haaland and how good he is, because he just is. Yeah, just get Erling Haaland in your team. And that's pretty much my tier list and my opinions on that. I think we've got all of the main players you guys are talking about at the moment on the screen right now. And I've maybe been a little bit harsh, but I think there are a lot of risky picks. And I don't actually think there are that many really, really good options. If you guys are looking for a forward to go alongside Erling Haaland, I would be looking at the kind of tiers A and B for your picks. I think all of those players are very, very valid. If you want to go for a risky pick, that is absolutely fine as well. But those avoids, I would not be touching those players personally. Do let me know if there's any forwards you think I have missed in this video in the comments. And yeah, I will try and rank them according to this kind of table, but in the comment section. So let me know in the comments. Like I say, guys, if you did enjoy this one and you would like to see a midfielders version, it will probably take me a little while longer to make because there's so many more midfielders that we're kind of talking about and considering at the moment. Let me know by hitting the like button. As soon as this hits 2,000 likes, I'll get that video out for you as soon as possible, if you want it. Do subscribe as well if you're new around here. Make sure you've got that notification bell on so you don't miss a thing. And do go check out some of my other videos. Like I said, there's a couple of forwards we spoke about today that actually we spoke about in more detail and looked into their numbers. That was in a video yesterday, so do make sure you go check that out. The link is going to be somewhere around there for that video. But aside from that, guys, thank you so much for watching once again. Make sure you check out Fantasy Football Hub, link in the description. Aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.